So we've seen this incredible rise of double majors, especially at the most selective colleges and universities in the country. And that's the question: is why is this? What's motivating students, and what factors are enabling this process? And there's a few things. I mean, one, many more students are arriving to campus with more credit than they've ever had before. So there's more opportunities to get college credit in high school, and more students are enrolling in those AP courses because it makes them more competitive for college. So they're arriving with credits, so they have a little bit more elbow room, if you will, to do a double major. A lot of students also are the cost of college has gone up. And I think for some students, this is a way of getting a bigger bang for their buck, right? Well, this is one of the surprise findings is that these students don't take extra time. So we actually, we asked the students, what are your plans for next year? And the same percentage of single majors and double majors, I think it was about 10% for each, said that they were planning to be enrolled again in undergraduate. So that would have been a fifth year. So there was no difference in terms of time to degree as far as we could see. And the other thing that was really shocking, I think, to us when we did this work was sort of how felicitous the whole thing was for so many of these students. They were, some students, I could have taken 3 majors. This is kind of the do more generation. I mean, they know how to manage lots of burners, right? They have lots of things cooking at the same time, and they have ever since high school and junior high, middle school. And that's in partly, especially if you're looking at selective schools, that's how they got here, right? By proving that they could do all these things and still maintain their academic standards. And so I think we're finding that, double major students are more likely to do everything and compared to singles. So they're more likely to be in clubs, they're more likely to be officers of clubs, they're more likely to do independent studies, they're more likely to travel abroad, they're more likely to write an honors thesis. So it doesn't seem like they're giving up a lot to do it. That said, it does add to an already very frenetic and hectic college life. And so, for some students, that does produce some diminishing returns, and especially students that are sort of majoring in creative majors like creative writing or visual arts or photography or theater. These students sometimes report when they pick up a second major, especially if it's in a science, that they don't feel like they have that time they need to deeply immerse themselves in their art. So there are trade-offs, and we're not suggesting that students don't have to work hard to make this happen. But it does seem to us that students are sort of professional students, and they know how to do it, and they've been trained for a very long time in managing a really hectic and frenetic schedule. These are highly motivated students. Some of the students would fit into what you would consider to be sort of the Renaissance student, right? They actually see themselves as being a scientist and an artist, and their major sort of allows them to live out that identity. Some of the students are really focused, and so they pick majors that are really close to each other, finance and accounting, right? And they kind of what we call sort of double down in an area, and they want to go really deep. In general, we find that that double majors do report that they feel more creative because of their double major. I think they feel more creative in part because they do say that they see connections, and when they're sitting in class, they often think about things differently from the perspective of their other major. And also because I think they feel distinctive. So they feel creative because they feel different. Not, their roommates aren't majoring in this combination. There are fewer people like them on campus, and that kind of reinforces their sense of being creative. And they also generally report that they're able to do some integration across their majors. And now that, the people who double down and choose subject areas that are quite adjacent are more easily able to integrate, and those that are choosing, a science and a fine art or humanities have more trouble integrating, in the sense that they have trouble thinking of an assignment for one class that might be, with a little bit of reworking, be used in the other major. But those, what we call the the hypo majors, which is those that are in very different subject areas, report the most creativity gains. So even if they're having trouble integrating knowledge, they do feel like they're expanding their minds more than the students who are majoring in things more closely connected. You know, very few institutions have any kind of capstone experience for the students, and even I think even an opportunity that we sort of miss out on every day is asking these students in our classrooms when they're sitting there participating in class discussion to take the topic under consideration and ask them specifically, hey, Johnny, you know, you're a philosophy major. How would a philosopher think about this issue, right? To ask them to wear the hat of the other major when they're in class. I mean, in some ways I kind of see, you know, we've been talking about interdisciplinarity in higher education for 3 decades now. We know that the problems necessary to solve, you know, the problems that we're facing in the future require interdisciplinary teams, and you can't solve it with one discipline, whether it's, you know, obesity or diabetes or malaria or urban development, right? These things require interdisciplinary teams. But you know, faculty will sit together for a year in an interdisciplinary seminar and have fun talking about ideas. But you know, in general, it's kind of a we don't do a really good job as faculty of getting these interdisciplinary projects off the ground. Sometimes we cooperate even when we're not collaborating. But you know, students are kind of living interdisciplinarity in their brain when they're double majoring, right? And they're in our classes every day. They're sort of you might think about them as the bees that are buzzing around and landing on one flower over here, chemistry, and then hopping over to another flower over here, which might be, you know, art or psychology. And so we should ask them to cross-pollinate in our classrooms. And we don't do that. We hardly ever do it, and we should.